Section 48 of the Soul or Rational Psychology. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Soul or Rational Psychology by Emanuel Swedenborg. Translated by Frank Sewall, 1837 to 1915, and others. Section 48. Chapter 31. Concerning the Divine Providence. 549. There is no one, I think, so insane as to deny that there is a certain supreme direction or divine providence. For all things are full of deity, and we admire in each and everything the order which is attributed to nature and its perpetual preservation, not by itself, which would be absurd, but by some higher being from whom it has existence, and subsequently subsistence. We see blended together a multitude of phenomena, going to prove a regulating providence, as that all things seem to be for the sake of use or an end, especially that one end seems to exist on account of another, so that there may be a series of ends from a certain first, through intermediates, to a last, or another first. But, for example, the earth itself exists, that it should be inhabited by animated beings; the mineral kingdom, that it may produce the vegetable; that it may nourish and sustain the animal; the lower species of animals, that they may serve the higher; and all that they may serve the human race; the atmospheres, that we may be enclosed and held in the body, and that we may breathe and talk; the ether with the sun, that each being may exist, and also that we may see. But why mention more? There is not a worm, nor a plant, nor a blade of grass without its use, namely, that it may serve as a means to a certain end, so that the visible world is a complex of means to an end beyond the world or beyond its own nature. For there is a progression of ends through natural effects, and thus through universal nature. That there is such a perpetual relation and progress of ends, namely, that one is always for the sake of another, is to be held as attributable to a divine providence, indeed, as indicating that God has so provided all particulars that they shall maintain this their order. 550. The universe, with each most particular thing in it, is the work of God alone, for nothing could flow from itself. What can exist without an origin? If the origin belong to nature itself, whence then is nature, unless you worship that as God? And if these are the works of God, it is necessary that he sustain them, for without perpetual sustentation all things would relapse into their primitive chaos. Thence he must be actually omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, and if omnipotent, it follows that he provides for each and every thing in order that there may be ends intermediate to a further end. To rule and provide for a universe is the divine itself, and property of divinity, nor has this need of counsel nor of care. For from itself, of its own essence, wisdom, and love, all these things flow in their connection, order, and their genuine series. 551. If there is a universal providence of God, there is also a particular one. For the universal never exists without particulars, from which it is called universal. Of what quality is the universal can be judged from the particulars. Thus from providence in most particular things may be judged what it is in the universal. Nor would there be any universal unless it concerned itself with particulars, and this indeed in the case of providence, in order that all these may conspire to universal ends. 552. All providence regards an end, and it foresees means to an end. Thence is the future embraced in the present, and the present is as the complex of the past. So is there a series of means to a certain end, which is the first in the mediates and in the ultimates. But of what nature is the divine providence we may see much better from examples than from bare axioms. 553. The end of creation, or the end on account of which the world was created, could be no other than the first and the last, or the most universal of all ends, and that which is perpetually reigning in the created universe, which is the complex of means conspiring to that end. No other end of creation can be given than that there may exist a universal society of souls, or a heaven, that is, the kingdom of God. That this was the end of creation may be proved by innumerable arguments, for it would be absurd to say that the world was created on account of the earth and terrestrial societies, and this miserable and perishable life, since all things on earth are for the sake of man, and all things in man for the sake of his soul, and the soul cannot be for no end. If then it exists for any end, it must be for a society in which God is present. For his providence regards souls which are spiritual, and his works are adapted to men and to their consociation. 554. In order that a celestial society, or society of souls, may exist, it is necessary that there be a most perfect form of government, namely, souls distinct among themselves, and every possible variety, which may be called harmonies between the souls, and so from such harmony there will arise a consensus and accord, which shall produce that entire effect and end which is always foreseen and provided. 555. Let there be this most universal end, which is at once the first, the all in the mediates, and the last, and thus the same as the first, and we shall see at once how the divine providence reigns in foreseeing and dispensing the mediates. It may be said God might create such a society at once, without our earth and worldly things. That is, he might fill heaven with souls without any generation and multiplication in this earth. This indeed cannot be denied. All things to God are possible. But there are also innumerable things which are to him impossible. For instance, to be imperfect, mortal, inconstant, wicked, unjust. This is repugnant to his nature, and because such a society as we have described, whose form is most perfect, can in no wise be given without every variety, even from the most perfect to the most imperfect, from the pure to the impure, from love to hatred, or because there are intermediates from given opposites, thus between the highest good or God and the greatest evil or the devil. Therefore from these promises it would follow that God, because he is perfection itself, wisdom, goodness, and love, could in no wise create immediately any devil or any soul in whom evil or any guilt should reside. Hence not man together with vice, crime, and sin, and hence not such a variety as is required for such a society as we have described. For whatever immediately flowed from God cannot be otherwise than the best and the most perfect. But that the evil and the imperfect should have come into existence can be traced not immediately to God as a cause, but to the created subject itself, in which it is a nature. Thus it is from the devil himself that he arose against his God and became a rebel. It was from Adam that he did contrary to the divine commandment, seeking how he might enjoy a higher and more perfect existence. It is clear from the sacred scriptures that the divine providence did not lead Adam immediately to this evil, but that it permitted it, that it permitted the serpent, that it forbade to him the tree, that it created Adam free and did not instruct him, that in the moment that he ate he was not checked and made to abstain, as was Abraham when he would sacrifice his son, beside many other things which clearly demonstrate that there was a providence that he should be able to sin, and a foreknowledge that he would sin and lose his pristine integrity, and thus that this result should flow as from the very principle of his being, namely, that souls are to be distinguished one from another, and that every possible variety must exist between them, and so the end of creation or the kingdom of God be reached, whose seminaries are terrestrial societies, which likewise represent the heavenly society. For there is nothing given in this world which does not contain a representation of the future world. That this end may be obtained, it is necessary that man shall be allowed a free will. The cause of variety of subjects arises solely from free exercise and liberty of the will. Without this there would be no intellect, no morality, no virtue, no vice, no crime, no guilt, no affection of the mind or change of state. This is the reason why God has wished to preserve the free human will strong and inviolate, even for the doing of evil deeds, so that we would seem to be almost willing to deny a divine providence for the same reason that we would affirm it. But the liberty allowed to human minds is not absolute, but limited. It is like a bird which the fowler holds bound by its foot or tied with a string, and which can move about to a certain distance. It is provided that it shall not go beyond this limit. 556. The means which restrict the free wills of men are numerous. There are, for instance, societies, and the forms of their government, laws, punishments of the body, judges, all things done in order that men shall not abuse their free will. There are consciences and laws and rights impressed on our minds, which are the most stringent bonds. There is religion or divine worship, the fear of eternal punishments and condemnation, and the love and hope of happiness. This therefore may be called the bond of society and of societies. There is a certain fate which follows every one, and abides with him continually, according to his crimes or his virtues. Concerning this we shall treat further on. There is especially the cause of fate, the influx of God himself by his Spirit into souls, which nevertheless exist as contingently, as if nothing by provision or consultation. 557. Meanwhile, unless such means had been provided, and God himself had been acting as the ruler and establisher of all, no human society whatever could have existed, where one always seeks the destruction of the other, and despises to despoil him of his goods, and when many esteem themselves higher than societies, and imagine that all things exist for themselves alone. Such a society, animated by a spirit destructive of society itself, nevertheless exists entire, and this could not be the case without a divine providence. 558. The very divine providence itself principally reigns in distinguishing particulars from particulars, lest there should be given one state of mind absolutely like another. On this account liberty is granted. Marriages are said to be foreordained in heaven. Marriages of parents and children, of brothers and sisters, are wholly forbidden. Schisms and controversies, as well of religion as of principles of economy, politics, philosophy, and physics, are tolerated and almost inspired. All differ in their principles, and thence in their mental dispositions, so that we say, many heads, many minds, animae. Nature herself abhors every equality between one thing and another, for such would be one and the same, and there would be nothing distinct, and hence nothing natural. 559. Providence reigns both particularly and universally in selecting and foreseeing those who are to attain to heavenly happiness. For the human race is the seminary itself of heaven, and the city of God or the Church is scattered throughout the universal world, and from thence is the celestial society collected. Thus all those who are called the elect are ruled by a particular providence of God. 560. This is the principal end, and these the means leading to that end. But there are still infinite means which in their essence as means pursue either mediately or immediately this series of ends, whether as pertaining to things mundane or corporeal, or to things spiritual. In regard to things corporeal, in order that the body may be covered or clothed, the whole globe furnishes the vestments, yea, even the worms do this. And as food is also necessary that man may live in the body, this is also provided. As for mundane affairs, there are the wealth and possessions necessary for civil existence, also the sciences, and innumerable other things. For the spiritual interests of man it is revealed of what nature heaven is, what the will is, how God is to be adored, and by what means the state of the soul is to be perfected, so that it may be a member of heaven, and this in such manner that its liberty may not be injured, but that it may freely turn itself to God. 561. But concerning providence, fate, fortune, predestination, and human prudence, we have already treated, which passages see and add. End of section 48.